Welcome back to the Skating Penguin Network, everyone. We have a very special episode coming to you this evening. At least we're recording it this evening. It'll be out on Thursday. But if you can read the title, it says, the episode is what the title says, Fare Thee Well to our once fearless leader, Garrett Bahana. This will be his swan song as a member of the podcast, becoming I guess, a listener of the podcast, a fan of the podcast from here on out. But I'm going to just go right to Garrett. And Garrett, I know you're busy. Work is crazy. Um, but, I mean, good to have you back one last time as a member of the group here. And any just I mean, it kind of ended all abruptly with the Penguins season ending, but I mean, you're gone. You're gone. You're leaving us.
I feel like if the Penguins would have actually made the playoffs, it would have been. I think a lot of things would have been different. It's like with my exit and how like the Penguins obviously would have continued into the first round, and we would have continued doing mailbags and whatnot into the end of April, maybe even the beginning of May, depending on how long the series would go. But yeah, it honestly. I mean, I don't want to be the kind of person here that is gonna like take credit and be like, I can't believe I'm leaving, and like have the both of you and everyone else be like, yes, here is the next 45 minutes is gonna be devoted to me and why I'm special and why everyone's going to miss me when I'm gone and all that stuff. But I look at it as I'm not going anywhere. I mean, yes, I won't be a regular contributor on the show anymore, but like you mentioned, Robbie, I will definitely continue to be a listener, and any questions or anything between the two of you that come up, like I'm just a text away. It's weird. It's like I'm not. I don't feel like I'm departing. I'm not really going anywhere. But as you mentioned, uh, life sort of happens quickly, and some things happen then when you're not expecting them. The same can be said for my crazy work schedule as we record this at 8:30 in the evening on Wednesday night. I set an alarm. I was up at 7 a.m. this morning. I left my house to go to the trolley station. I left my house around 8, got to the trolley station around 8:40. I was in the city of Pittsburgh by 9:35. I worked from 10 to 6 p.m. and now I'm back home. So that's the just to give you a little like timeline of how crazy my days can be sometimes. But um, yeah, it feels weird. I mean, I never looked at this as like my baby. It was never like I don't have that sort of like sentimental attachment to it. But I also know that the podcast is in good hands with both Robbie and Snail, and I know that they have a really solid, experienced support group within Fans for Sports Network to continue podcasting. And I'm sure the listeners and whatnot, they're not going anywhere.
No.
So
Yeah.
Quickly before we move on from
Yeah,
that,
go ahead.
there's a couple things we got to unpack here about what Garrett just said about his 9 to 5 day. You said a trolley station. I thought trolleys were like a thing of the past, like from like the 1800s, how people got around in like old San Francisco. Is it really a trolley that gets you around in Pittsburgh? Or is it is it more of like an updated system, like a light rail is what we call it here in Seattle.
It's exactly what it's a light rail. It is exactly a light rail. I just used trolley for shorthand, but yes, it is. When you say light rail around Pittsburgh, people look at you like, "What the fuck is a light rail?"
Yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah, they would be completely baffled if you use that.
But
word.
if you said trolley, I'm gonna catch the trolley.
Yes.
And they would, they'd have a better understanding. I mean, trolley. Depending if they're from Pittsburgh, they would definitely
would know.
If you said the T, like Garrett has mentioned, the T.
If you were like, I'm going, where's the trolley station? Someone would be like, due west, like immediately without hesitation.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's 100% a light rail system.
Yeah. If you said where's the light rail station, they'd look at you like, really, they would look at you bizarre.
Yep.
We don't
I
even
understand.
have a cool name for our light rail out here in Seattle. That's been such a big deal. We just literally call it the light rail. Where like you hear like in Chicago and in New York, you catch the L train, or as
Yeah,
you call it, the T or whatever. And in Seattle, it's just like, well, the light rail. It's so lame.
we
The
have.
next
Yeah.
thing was Garrett. How's the shin splints, buddy? I remember last time we talked,
God.
you were struggling. Brian was playing his very tiny violin for you because he essentially told us he walks the entire length of Pennsylvania once a day for work. How's the shin splint? If you were in the playoffs right now, would you be on the IR or would you be battling through? Would this keep you out of a game 3, game 4 scenario?
No, if I was in the playoffs, I would definitely be playing. But I can give you an update. So we probably talked a week ago, or maybe 2 weeks ago.
I think it was 2.
I've had the shin splint for 2 weeks, and I can give you a fresh update because I was walking on that leg today to and from my building. The shin splint has not gone anywhere. It is still as bad as it was 2 weeks ago. The only time I get a reprieve is when I'm resting it, either lying down or sitting. I mean, I'm not putting it through a strenuous exercise when I'm walking up and down my steps in my house. But I'm getting off the tee this morning to start walking, and it wasn't hurting at the time. So I'm like, okay, maybe enough time has passed where it's sort of healed itself, and it won't bother me. But no, it started flaring up again. It was a pain to get to my building. It was a pain to get to the tee to come home. So I don't know if it's a deeper underlying issue that I just have to look into. I don't know if like how nagging in nature shin splints are. I thought maybe like over the course of 2 weeks, like I said, it would like course correct itself and like maybe develop some sort of tolerance to me walking more frequently. Because let's be real, I was working remotely. I would roll out of bed some days and just roll right into my desk and start working. I'm getting more exercise and steps in now because I have to than I have been for quite a while. So I understand why the shin splint occurred because I'm using this muscle more frequently and more strenuously. I just thought like hopefully it would have healed, and it has not. So I don't know what the issue is. I'm like this close to going on Amazon and like trying to find remedies to see how I can fix this. And it's only my left leg. My right shin, I have no shin splints whatsoever in my right leg. It is my left leg for some reason. I may have to get it amputated, and if I do, I'll keep you posted.
I see. I give you a lot of crap because I act like I act like you're like 11 years old on here sometimes. I can't tell if you're 16 years old or like 94, judging by this conversation.
And
Uh,
a lot of people that I'm friends with, like my best friend who I've grown up with and I've known for
all of
23
9 years that you've been
yeah,
alive.
all of the 9 years of my existence, like he pokes fun at me for the same reason, like because so I have a minor in history. Not to go too off topic, but I guess there's no real direction in this podcast. But I minored in history when I was in school,
Yeah.
and my best friend always pokes fun at me because he says I'm going to be the stereotypical white man with like the white pulled up tube socks, the white like the generic like New Balance dad shoes. I'm gonna be wearing jean shorts with a belt and like a clip on for my cell phone on my
Polo
belt.
tucked in.
Yes, the shirt is gonna be tucked in. So my best friend gives me crap about that. So because he like sometimes I'm hip with it. I'm hip with the slang and whatnot of today's youth, and other times I do feel like maybe I am in my head. Maybe I am older than I sometimes lead on. Maybe I am a 94-year-old at heart. So
Yeah, you're Benjamin Button.
yeah, it's weird. It's like I'm gonna be 26 in 2 weeks, but like in my head, I'm probably 96. So it's that weird like reverse Benjamin Button syndrome.
Yes, the reverse Benjamin Button. So like you're about to turn 26, but like really you're like 86.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I don't know. Maybe if I'm 86, like in my head, I wonder. I mean, obviously I'll be 26 according to my birth certificate, but who knows? Maybe I'll be closer.
Biologically, you might
Yeah,
be nearing retirement.
who's to say? Who's to say I wouldn't be? I only have 2 weeks left on this planet.
What shoes? You're a big pop punk guy. Vans and Converse are synonymous with pop punk. They also have no arch support, which would I could see that giving you a shin splint because it's happened to me. If I'm doing a long day of walking in the city, I sport mostly Vans. But I made an investment at one point. I bought some Hokas, and those, as much as like they are expensive and ugly, they are saviors for the feet. What kind of footwear do you rock, Garrett? Being the pop punker that you are, where are you? But you're also 65 at heart. Where does the footwear lie with you?
My shoes are right here. They're a regular pair. They're just Nikes. They're black Nikes, and this apparently variation of Nike is called Nike Flex. I don't know what kind of like benefit that gives you when walking or running. You would think that like with how far shoe technology has come these days that like they would have like built-in materials to like help prevent against shin splints. And like if I'm walking like throughout the city like I do frequently for work, like I'm gonna wear these like Nike shoes so that I, in theory, you'd have a bit more support. But I guess these shoes are not offering me the support that I need because I keep getting this re-aggravation of this shin splint. So I don't know whether I have to go look for a different pair of shoes or if I have to find some sort of insert to put into the sole of the shoe. I have no idea.
Maybe just keep walking more. Maybe it'll build up some muscle
That's
around
what I thought would happen over
your
the last 2
calves.
weeks, and nothing. It hasn't. If anything, it's gotten worse because it's still as bad as it was 2 weeks ago. I thought like building a tolerance would fix the issue somewhat, but it has not whatsoever.
Need to just get a wheelchair.
Honestly, like
file for disability and you can just
So-
get a scooter.
here's what I'll say. I don't know if I've ever publicly disclosed this on a podcast, but I do qualify for disability
What?
because when I was born, I've had a disability since birth. My twin sister and I were both diagnosed with cerebral palsy at birth, which is a motor disease that can affect motor skills and whatnot. My sister has it a bit worse than I do, but I mean, according to the doctors, when my mother gave birth to my sister and myself, and according to the government, by technicality, I guess if you want to call it, do have a disability. So I would feel bad because I would be in a wheelchair, and if you saw me out in public, you would think this person does not deserve to be in a wheelchair because it looks like he can walk just fine. However, I have used the disability card perhaps to
Dude, I would milk that shit.
exactly. That's what I want to say. I've milked it in certain scenarios. I don't want to like rely on it too heavily because I know there are people who are far less fortunate than I am in the position that I'm in.
They tell you to milk it too.
They probably would, honestly. Like I said, if you saw me in public and Robbie's seen me in public, the rest of the Pennsburg crew has seen me in public, you wouldn't really know it unless you knew what you were looking for and like you really studied some aspects of like how I maneuver myself and walk. But like, like I said, I'm not one to like play the handicap card and like use it. Like I'm not gonna pull into a parking space at Walmart into the handicap spot just to get a better parking space.
Is it horrible for me to be like, why the hell wouldn't you? I mean, just whip right into that front parking space. You're about 4 feet from the door. You don't have to carry your groceries that far. I mean,
it's more or less a moral dilemma, I guess, if you look at it. Like, if you feel bad about doing it. Well, I guess, yeah, I mean, if you look at it that way, just screw that. And, what I don't have, so my sister, like I said, my sister has it a bit worse than I do, mobility-wise. She has a state issued handicap placard, but I do not. I could probably get one. I've never gotten one because like mobility wise, I've never really needed it. But like, I hate to be that person, but maybe I will get one.
Hey, I mean,
why the hell not?
Yeah, I will say. Why? I mean,
I didn't know that about you, Gary. I just learned a lot about you, and this is the last time we're ever gonna be on air.
He's going away, so he doesn't. He can spill it all on this episode.
when I leave, I'm gonna like when we're done recording, I'm blocking both of your numbers in my phone.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Wouldn't that be hilarious? It's like, I know you're joking, but like that's just your sense of humor. I've come to learn with all the threats and the threats of blocking. But wouldn't that be hilarious? That like after we sign off, it's just like Garrett has gone completely rogue. We can't get a hold of him ever again. He's actually moved states.
Yeah,
he actually never existed in the first place.
He's AI.
He's like Carmen Sandiego.
Yeah. Yep. Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego?
You don't know who that is, Garrett. I know you don't.
I don't. It wasn't. I didn't grow up with it, but my
go.
sister, who is 6 years older than me, she grew up with it. So
there you go.
Like by proxy.
Yeah. You got the after effects of it. Garrett, I did say that I have a mailbag question from Ryan for you. You already answered kind of part of it.
Okay.
Basically saying you're just completely going. He asked, will you be editing or doing any of the outline or anything? And you basically said no, that you're completely stepping away from that. So Brian asked basically, are you going to become a listener / question asker for the podcast now?
It feels weird to be in that position because, God, I haven't even thought that really hasn't even crossed my mind. Being technically, I can be a question. I mean, I guess I always could have been a question asker, but now, I mean, yeah, like I'm basically completely separating myself from the podcast and all aspects of podcast creation. Yeah, I never really like took the time to realize I could make your guys' life super easy by just pulling a Brian and asking you guys like 15 questions a week for a mailbag, and like boom, you already have this week's mailbag outline basically done.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the more questions, the better for us. I mean, especially now that we split it up into two parts, if we get the more questions we get, the easier it makes on us to put it together and get some content out. So,
if things ever start slowing down too much, I'll Venmo you $40 and you know what to do.
Oh man, if you're gonna financially incentivize me to like give you guys content, like oh man,
I have all the content in the world.
It would just be a nonstop question factory. I'd just be pumping them out like just one after the other. Yeah, if you're gonna wave a shiny $40 bill in my face, then absolutely.
Oh boy. So Garrett, you've been running. How long were you on the podcast? How long ago did you start? I can't remember exactly. The podcast.
I can tell you exactly when we started. Not even before Robbie.
Yeah, before me. Yeah, I mean, like when, because the podcast was kind of born out of Jim's idea, and then you kind of took it over.
Yes.
I can't remember exactly when you kind of became the podcast guy. Obviously, we started with Pennsburg. We were Pennsburg for however long, up until February, March of 2023. So we've been at Fans First for a little over a year now. But I can't remember exactly when you kind of became the head of the podcast, starting back at Pennsburg.
You know what? The idea popped into my head in 2018, going into the 2018. I think it was the 2018-19 season. So
yeah,
October.
Yeah,
of 18, I guess, would be when I started.
So about 5 years.
Yeah,
you've been here, and I made a couple cameos or guest appearances early in the early days. I know me and you interviewed Sean McAnody,
yes,
of The Athletic, and we also interviewed Andy Perlman of the Penguins New Media.
Oh, yeah, what a joy she was.
She was great. Both of those guests were absolutely fantastic. Do you have another guest? I know you guys interviewed others that really sticks out, that you guys talked to, that really stuck out as being and knowing the game well, or just a joy to have on. Just anybody really stick out other than those two that me and you teamed up on?
It would for me. It would have to be Josh Yohe from The Athletic. He joined I think he joined the podcast twice. It was just because he was in demand. I remember when I reached out to him. I can't remember how I got his contact information. It was either through Jim or Mike Darnay, who we both worked with at Pennsburg. Had his contact saved in his phone. And that contact got passed on to me. I remember asking him if he would join our podcast around trade deadline time. I
Okay.
can't remember when the first time he joined the podcast because he was on a separate second episode too.
Okay.
But I remember the first time that I reached out to Josh, he said like absolutely in a heartbeat. He said, "Yes, I will give you some of my time." Like, and from that point forward, I was like, not that this man could do no wrong in my eyes, but I really appreciated someone with the reputation of Josh Yohe, who in Penguin circles perhaps is one of the most knowledgeable insider, sort of reporters that you can have on that Penguins beat. So for him to sort of lend, I don't want to say he lent his reputation, but having when I remember when I was putting in the details for that podcast episode, it was like Pennsburg podcast, da 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 da, Josh Yohe. And I knew when people saw the name Josh Yohe, I knew right away that they would be more inclined to click it because Yohe has been such a reputable force on the Penguins beat for so many years. So for me, I was just super appreciative of Josh Yohe taking time out of his day. I remember when I reached out to him around the trade deadline, whatever trade deadline that was, he was probably booked solid with like media appearances and radio appearances, other podcast appearances. So for him to like sort of lend his expertise on the Penguins beat to this sort of no-name Pittsburgh Penguins podcast at the time, I was super thrilled, super thankful, super grateful to have Josh. Another interview I'll give you, I can't remember, Robbie, if you were with me or if it was me and Jimmy. We had Phil Bourque on one time. I think he was promoting a book that he had recently published.
Okay.
I believe the book was called "If These Walls Could Talk."
I do. I don't think that was my interview, but I do know the book you're talking about. Yes.
So I think Jimmy was the one who got that interview set up, if my memory serves. And I've interacted with Phil. I don't want to say I know him personally, or we're not even acquaintances, but I've interacted with him just a handful of times through experience working in radio and through the podcast. And he is the person that you see doing, for instance, the Phil Bourque that you see doing broadcasts, doing color commentary, that the same high energy person you see either on your radio or in your TV screen is the same kind of person I think you get even with some rinky dink podcast appearance. And in the few short interactions I had with Phil Bourque, he maintained that same high energy. He was super approachable, super nice guy. I would talk to him again in a heartbeat. Again, we don't know each other, but the fact, again, someone like Phil Bourque, who I sound like a broken record at this point, but a lot of the guests we had on early on, really when Jimmy and I started the thing in 2018, and even Robbie, when you joined after Jimmy took a step back, the guests that we were booking early on, I think, in my opinion, really helped. I don't know how much it elevated the podcast, but in my mind, it was elevating it to a certain level because we were getting established talent who covered the game and either played the game or covered the game. So to me, getting those guests on only helped the podcast grow. Again, I'm not here to say that, we've made the greatest podcast of all time, but I think looking back on some of the people that I've gotten to interview with you, Robbie, and with Jim previously, those two guests certainly, when you asked me that question, those two names were the first two that come to mind, Josh Yohe and Phil Bourque.
Yeah, I mean, in the scheme of Penguins coverage or Penguins, I mean, just being a Penguins fan, you've definitely come across those two names, even if you're not on Twitter or anything like that. If you're familiar at all with the history of the Penguins, you know Phil Bourque. If you follow the Penguins in any capacity through media, you definitely know who Josh Yohe is. And Yohe gives so much credence to Penguins coverage, and Bourque being not only the color man on radio and now TV, but also being a former player, multi-time Stanley Cup winner. Working with Mike Lang and now with Josh Getzoff and Steve Mears. Both of those guys bring great credence to the podcast and the voice, getting people to tune in. And those are always good times, and those shows always do good numbers. And I definitely want to try to get back to that in some way here in the next season. But I'll get a little sentimental here, Garrett. Don't cry. If you need tissues real quick, you can run off and grab some. But you asked me to come on in, I believe, 2001. 2021.
Dude, Garrett wasn't born yet.
Yeah, Garrett was barely born. I believe that's when you asked me to come on to the show. It was during that COVID shortened season. There was the Jeff Carter acquisition. The podcast, it's really hard to fathom like how much different the podcast looks now as compared to then. Like back then, it was basically one show a week. Do it at this time. Here's the format: a little news, some questions, and we did that for up until now. And inviting me on, I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it, but I'm glad I did. I've loved it. I've loved working with Garrett and now Snail, and where we've gone. There was obviously last year the little scare if we were going to be able to continue when Vox and SB Nation decided that we no longer mattered to them. But we thank Fans First for reaching out and giving us a home, and Garrett sticking with it through this season. He's not leaving us because we're mad at him. I mean, we could be, maybe we are. I don't know. We'll reveal that. We'll reveal that in our group text messages. But Garrett is leaving because he got a better job, and that is great for Garrett. He has been plugging away at KDKA for however long now, and has earned his stripes and has earned his position. So we congratulate him on that. But more or less, I thank Garrett because without him, I wouldn't be doing this. Snail wouldn't be doing this, and I think all three of us have become really good friends. Garrett, obviously, you and I were friends before the podcast, just with Pennsburg and stuff, and it's good to know that you'll still be there doing that. And Snail joined in this year and has become part of the group, and will be continuing this journey. So I'll give him a little airtime here in a second to give his thoughts on Garrett. But overall, it's been quite a ride with Garrett as his second in command for the past 3 years, and kind of now learning the ropes and taking it over. I'm really glad that he gave me that opportunity, and it's been quite a ride. The way that I believe we've grown the podcast, and just you kind of filling in spots and doing a lot of the heavy lifting for so long made it very easy on me. But I'm looking forward to kind of filling those shoes. Whatever shoes you buy, just let me know, and I'll buy the same pair, and I can fully fill those shoes without shin splints, hopefully. I don't walk like 3 miles to work every day or anything like that. But Garrett, it's been a heck of a ride. I appreciate everything you've done for the podcast, bringing me on, and kind of sticking with Pennsburg. So we'll still collaborate over there as we do. Getting to that time of year now where we're kind of fishing for content, and if you guys aren't familiar with what we do at Pennsburg, Garrett and I are primarily the Pens Point crew in the early mornings. We've been doing that for before the podcast. I know that much.
Yes, very much.
Yeah, very much so before the podcast. Garrett and I have been teaming up on the Pens Points for the better part of almost, I'd say, 8 years now. I joined in 2016. Garrett joined in 2016. I could be wrong. I think that's right. So him and I have been doing that, and that's how we got connected, and now we do this. And obviously he's always welcome back as a guest. We'll never say no to him. We'll definitely have to have him on at some point once we can in the future, because he's always going to be a part of this podcast in some way. I mean, he is the co-founder with Jim.
Oh, Bahana to the rafters in our little space.
Whatever number you want, we will raise it to the rafters, Garrett. You pick the number, and we will. We are definitely. You are the inaugural member of the Skating Penguin Network Hall of Fame, Wall of Honor, whatever we want to call it. But I thank you for basically asking me to do this 3-4 years ago, whatever it is. It's been a hell of a ride, bud, and I look forward to where you go from here, because I know you're excited for your job and where it's going. So thank you. That's all I can really say is thank you for giving me a chance and getting to us where we are now.
So I want to say
Podcaster salute.
podcaster salute. I'll say one thing before, because I know Snail definitely deserves some airtime. I'll say one thing to piggyback off of Robbie. Um, when Jim came to me and said he wanted to take a step back from the podcast, I was convinced at that point that the podcast was going to die right there. And I was going to say, okay, like, I got a little bit of experience, like editing audio
Yeah.
and like booking guests and whatever. But I was convinced when Jim said he wanted to take a step back, I was like, okay, the podcast is probably going to die. I don't really have anybody, because out of my friend group, out of everyone that I went to school with, like no one else really did this sort of thing. No one else podcasted. No one else did like edit audio. No one else did any of that stuff. I just happened to go to school. I ended up going to school for broadcast journalism. So a lot of those skills sort of overlap, and some of the software that you have to learn to master, basically a lot of that overlaps with school. So I was like, okay, Jim wants to take a step back. I was gonna go through the whoever at the time. I think it was me, you, Robbie. It was me, Robbie, Jim, Caitlin, and Mike. I think were like the main.
That was basically the core of Pennsburg.
And I was going to go through and basically ask any of them if they were interested in doing this. Put air quotes around full time, because it obviously wasn't full time, but like during the duration of the hockey season, if they wanted to sort of come with me and sort of continue this with Jim taking a step back. And, it's not me having reservations about Robbie and his ability, because he's obviously, I think, become more than capable of doing all of this on his own. But it's the fact that it's asking somebody who, Robbie, correct me if I'm wrong, like before you started podcasting, I don't know how much podcasting experience, if any, you had. So it's basically
Little.
Exactly. So it can be challenging. Some people think it's daunting to talk into a microphone. The same would be said for like getting in front of a camera. So I was fully prepared to just shut everything down, because I wasn't going to subject someone who wouldn't be comfortable like hearing the sound of their own voice or talking into a microphone or doing X, Y, and Z. I wasn't going to be like, you have to do this because we have to podcast. So, for Robbie to come in and sort of be, like he said, the second in command. I don't even want to say that, because I think we have sort of divvied up responsibility. I think we've divvied it up relatively evenly. I mean, I was the one editing the audio and whatnot, but it's not like it was a one man show. It was absolutely, both of us doing it, I think, equally, and then Snail coming on, making it a trio relatively recently. But no, I mean, it can be hard trying to recruit those kinds of people into doing a task like that, because again, not everybody talks into a microphone either as a hobby or as like a regular job sort of thing. So for you to come in and take me up on my offer to continue podcasting to where we are today, which is crazy how like Robbie, like you mentioned it, how this thing has sort of morphed into what it is over the course of it'll be 6 years, I guess, if we're going to continue it. 6 years in this October. So
Yeah.
it's just crazy, but I will say ditto and thank you for coming along for this crazy podcasting gig, and sort of I'm proud of what you and I were able to do together, and then adding Snail into the mix. I'm proud of what we made the Skating Penguin Network when we transitioned over to Fans First Sports Network. Um, and I wholeheartedly believe, even though I'm not going to be in the weeds per se, you guys have a tremendous you have tremendous resources available, because I know between the both of you, Robbie and Snail, you both told me that like editing audio and whatever, it's not a thing that you do regularly or have a lot of experience in. But I also know that you guys have a ton of resources within Fans First. If you have any questions or anything like that, they are experts at what they do. It's the reason why they created Fans First Sports Network after, like Robbie said, Vox Media terminated the podcasting contracts. So you're not going to be alone on this crazy ride. But yeah, all the credit to you for Robbie for joining. All the credit to you as well, Snail, for coming on and being our first official recruit. But I know Snail, it's been a while since you've gotten some sense in. So I'll pass the mic over to you, Snail, if you have anything you'd like to add yourself.
Yeah, I'm not going to get too sentimental. Robbie, bravo, that was beautifully said. When I started listening well, it was Pennsburg when I first started listening to you guys.
Yeah.
I just remember I was at work. I just have headphones in all day. I'm painting houses, so I just remember I was listening to TSN. I was listening to them talk about, it was the trade deadline, the last year the Penguins went to the playoffs, and I was like, there has to be. I don't know why I'd never thought of it before, but there has to be Pittsburgh-centric podcasts out there. I mean, I listened to like Spit and Chicklets, Don LaGreca, who's mostly New York, tri-state area, TSN, which is all Toronto with sprinklings of the rest of Canada. And then the first podcast I committed to listening to a few episodes, it was your guys's. And I remember the first episode I listened to, I still remember this. You guys were talking about packaging up John Marino and Evan Rodriguez for Brock Besser. And instead of that, which is hilarious because I just like where Brock Besser is right now, that would never happen. But we ended up getting Ricard Raquel that year at the trade deadline to fill that right wing spot. And I just remember you guys, and then I learned that you guys have you had a Twitter you could write in on Twitter and a mailbag. And I was just like, I'm going to give these people pieces of my mind. I am writing in. And I just remember like, I would always be too late to like the mailbag. Like I'd write in and it would have been like, the East Coast thing messed me up a lot. I was usually like, I'd probably be like half in the bag at night tweeting in, and you guys had already closed off your questions. But no, I enjoyed, and it was crazy to talk to you guys on Zoom that one time, which I think it was Zoom or Skype or whatever it was, and to put faces to your guys' names. And I remember talking with Garrett and being like, I have no podcasting experience really. I'd pretty much, the only thing that was close to it really was like, I actually had all the equipment for podcasting, but I used it for evil, which was going on Twitch and drinking whiskey and playing NHL 21, 22, 23 and streaming me playing people and Chell and like getting in arguments with people about like Sidney Crosby. And that was my podcasting experience. Shocker. But Garrett took a chance on me, and here we are. A year later, the Penguins they haven't made the playoffs since I've been here. But I really thank Garrett, and like, dude, it feels like I feel like I was talking to my partner Riley about this, and she was like, it feels like you found like your people. And I was like, it's true. Cause like out here in Seattle, dude, like hockey fans are not as abundant as they probably are in Pittsburgh or in the Pacific Northwest really at all, unless you go north of the border, like Portland. You don't have that many hockey fans, especially Pittsburgh Penguins fans. I have a couple buddies that are into hockey. One's really into hockey. He hates the Penguins. He's a Kings fan. Can't talk to him about anything. So yeah, once I started like coming on with you guys, it was like a place to vent about the ups and downs of the Penguins season, and I'm the most active in the group chat with the woes of the Penguins. Like, but it's therapeutic, and it's been awesome to kind of find fellow fans. And I know that they're abundant over where you guys live, but for a guy like me, I'm on an island out here, and joining Skating Penguin Network, and it's just been awesome. And I thank Garrett, I thank Robbie for tolerating me. And here we are, and I'm excited to see what we do with it post Garrett. And I just gotta tip my hat to Garrett, and of course you too, Robbie. But I remember those early conversations we had on Twitter about looking for a third, as they say. And yeah, I just got to say thanks, man. And this isn't the end of the group chat. I hope you know, like, I'm still going to send you like horrendous things on Instagram and TikTok links that you still continue to ignore, but I don't blame you. You probably have, at least a day's worth of catching up to do on there, but all the best in post podcasting life. But I mean, dude, we got to get you back on every once in a while, right, Robbie? Like, we got to have him on.
Yeah, absolutely.
If something massive happens, it would be awesome to have you back on. If you could clear out a little time in your busy schedule for us, the small people in your life, I think that'd be sick.
My life has been irreversibly damaged having to know Snail for almost, well, I guess it would have been it's been at least a year. It's been over a year probably now at this point, maybe.
Does your therapist know my name?
No, but he will. I think he will eventually. I think my next session is in early May, and I think the first thing I'm going to talk to him about is this man in Seattle who he started podcasting with me, but I see him in my night terrors, and I can't get rid of him. So we need a way to like try and combat him and his presence.
He's like, the snail in Seattle is not real, Garrett.
He can't hurt you, but he ends up actually physically and mentally torturing me.
Well, gentlemen, me and Snell joked this was going to be a roast to Garrett, and it turned out to be more sentimental than that. But Garrett, for all the work you've done,
there will be shrapnel though in future episodes. Like,
probably, you're not like going to be like, you're still going to be in the splash zone, at the very least. But
wait, quickly, Robbie, sorry to interrupt, but I actually had a question for Garrett. So I was curious about this coming into this episode, and like, so I remember when you guys were, I was a listener when you guys were going through your transition of like Pennsburg to, well, you guys didn't even know if you were going to continue. Like, I remember the cliffhanger episode at one point being like, oh my God, these guys are done. And that's when I think admittedly, I started reading your guys' blogs a little bit more because I was like, shit, these guys, I was like, I'm going to miss these guys. I hope they don't go anywhere. And then I followed you over to the Skating Penguin Network. If without the pod, I guess just, I'm curious, like, are you going to still be watching a lot of Penguins games? Like, are you still going to be keeping up with the team as though you were podcasting? Does that change at all behind the scenes, or are you sick of it? Have they troubled you enough these last 2 years?
They have grinded my gears to no end, but I mean, I'm still going to, I mean, really, because during the season, I'm going to have to keep myself abreast.
It's still writing.
Yeah. So, I mean, just because I won't be talking into a microphone doesn't mean I won't be following the Penguins in some form or fashion. Like Robbie said, Robbie and I have been on the writing end of this thing for what'd you say, Robbie? 8 years almost?
I think 2016. So we're going to be we're basically, I think, just finished our 8th season.
So Jesus. That is absolutely ridiculous. That makes me feel old, and I'm not 26 until 2 weeks from now, which is crazy. But yes, I am still the fiery hearted Penguins fan. I always have been. However, Snail gives anyone Snail will give any Penguins fan a run for his money. That man wears his emotion on his sleeve when it comes to the ups and downs of the Pittsburgh Penguins, perhaps more so than I ever could. I do remember. I don't know if I've sort of mellowed out with like the medication that the doctors have me on, all the crazy meds that I have to take. But there was a point in time in like 2014, 15, 16, like before they won those cups, and like when the time of them winning the cups, like I was as chaotic as Snail is now. And I guess like since they won those cups, I've sort of like mellowed out because I guess in my mind I felt like that Crosby and Malkin, like their legacies were cemented, and it's like, okay,
Yeah,
these
makes sense.
Yeah.
these legendary players finally have what they should have had after 2009. But that doesn't make me any less of a fan. And part part of the reason part of the reason I love having Snail here is because I often call myself the cynic of the group, or I call myself like a hopeless realist who hates to look at things with like too much emotion. But you know, like eventually, I think what we're gonna do is just get like we're gonna make a T-shirt. It's gonna be like a yellow T-shirt, and in black text, it's just gonna say "piss and vinegar." That's like Snail's trademark at this point.
Yeah, it kind of is.
I love my piss and vinegar.
It
So,
kind of is,
but you
yeah.
know what? Thank God, thank the good Lord for Michael Bunting, because had it not been, I poo pooed the Jake Gensel trade at the time, and we still aren't really gonna know the full return of the Gensel trade for some time. But Michael Bunting he surpassed all my expectations, and he provided this team with exactly what it needed when Jake Gensel left. So Snail gets his fix of piss and vinegar with Michael Bunting that he hadn't had for a long time up until that point. So, but yeah, I really don't have much else to say.
Are you gonna are you still gonna, since you're in the city now, do you think you'll go to more Penguins games like in person?
So the hope is, because I'm still living with my parents right now. I'm about
Mm.
45 minutes with no traffic. I'm about 45 minutes south of Pittsburgh. The hope is by the end of the calendar year that I desperately want to get my own apartment. And I want to get my own apartment like 20-ish minutes north, where I'm at a good distance from the city, and I'm also at a like equalish distance from my parents' place. So there is a distinct possibility of me, now that I'm like working, like you said, working in the city more. There's a good possibility that I could catch more games in person. So that is also a possibility.
Nice.
You'll have to
That's
update
yeah.
us accordingly. I want to see the beer you're drinking and the hot dog that you're consuming with the condiments. Spark another conversation about mustard and whatnot.
You know what
Do
I
not
should
hold
do?
back on that.
You know what I should do? I should abuse my power as a member of the media and like get into the post game presser with Mike Sullivan, and like I should just like get into the locker. I should get locker room
Yeah.
access and like report, be like the beat writer for the podcast. Even if I'm not recording, I'm just passing you guys information from like the locker room sound bites or whatever. Uh, I should definitely abuse my power as a member of the media.
Yeah.
That would be like my dream for you. I just harassing Mike Sullivan or chanting like "Give us Reardon," that kind of stuff. I would love that. Do you guys have that ability? Can you guys get press passes?
It's very hard. For the Penguins, at least, I know it's hard because Robbie
Yeah.
and I sort of
Yeah,
know.
we've been through that. Wait,
Yeah.
you working with KDKA, you might find a way to
Yes.
squeak it out. But for Pennsburg, it's it's a trip, and it's a kind of a complicated long story. But you know what I'm talking about, Garrett.
I know exactly what
Um,
you're talking about.
yeah, but um, it's just kind of complicated. Maybe we haven't tried in a long time.
No, it's been a long time.
So we can't really. I mean, it could have changed since COVID and stuff, but I wouldn't hold my breath on that, unfortunately. But
Me neither.
that's just me. But well, gentlemen, I think we're gonna wrap this up here. And as we've done so many times before, and since this is the last show, Garrett, you are going to get the outro one final time. Snail left, I think.
He's gone forever. He couldn't take the outro.
He gone. He's crying. He's
Yeah.
crying too much. He literally just peaced out. All right. I will still allow you the outro to wrap this up and for one final time.
Alrighty. Well, I guess before we wrap it up officially, thanks to there he is. There he is.
I was exiting out of shit.
I wonder where you went. We thought
that
you
would have
wanted
been
to
such a
cry.
perfect exit.
We're
Like,
just on
I-
brand.
just an
smell you later, Garrett.
Yep.
You Irish exit a podcast. Just later, guys. All right. Don't even say goodbye. Just like, all right, he's done, gone. All right, Garrett, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thanks to before the Academy yanks me off the stage with the cane. Thanks to Brian for giving us a bazillion questions
Yeah.
over the course of our mailbags. Thanks to everyone who has ever submitted a question. Thanks to who are the ones off the top of my head? Kim Larson, Edward
Yeah.
Beckham. Who else?
Oh,
Brian.
Andreas Castle DM'd me on Twitter. He missed the last mailbag because he's actually recovering from a viral infection. So our best wishes to our German pal Andreas.
Jeez. Tony Gale.
Tony Gale, it is crazy to me that we have consistent listeners from different countries.
Yes.
That's the one thing that I'll take away from this entire experience is that we've been able to build a listener base from several different countries, and we're all sort of united by this one same thing, and it's this crazy affection for this dumb hockey team. But in order to quit rambling, because I know we've been at this for about an hour now, and it's past Robbie's bedtime. So, well, for Robbie, for Snail, for the final time, I have been Garrett Bahana. Thank you so much for listening to this farewell edition of the Skating Penguin Network podcast, and this mailbag, whatever you want to call it. And for Robbie and Snail, they will be back with you at some point in the near future talking about off-season stuff. But until then, thank you for listening. I have been Garrett once again, and well, we'll put a bow on it and end it right there.